What's up, everyone? Philly Insider here. We are here after a series loss versus the Braves, but a nice day off, and we are now healthier than we were when we played the Braves. Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber are back today against the Dodgers. Big series against the Dodgers, too. You want to see their guys, see what they got. It's a good time for them to come back. How we feeling, Drew?
Good. I mean, they played about as good as you could possibly hope without their big guys playing, so it's definitely encouraging that they got them back now. And I think Harper said he's got to take it a little easy this week, but Harper taking it easy is better than David Dahl striking out 10 out of 11 at-bats, so that's definitely an upgrade.
Yeah, David Dahl, man, good first week with the Phillies and just never saw that production again, unfortunately. And you feel for the guy, former All-Star. He was trying to claw his way back into the big leagues and, kind of just find some footing, but it just did not work out. It's unfortunate. I thought maybe between him and Clemens, we could find a left-handed bench bat. And Clemens was just option, so there's still a possibility that, he comes up and is maybe the left-handed bench bat if they can't find anyone at the deadline. But point being, obviously some changes made today, but it's just good to have those two guys back. Just having their literal presence in the lineup changes everything because it changes how you pitch to the rest of the lineup. And then you factor in we're getting JT back in a couple weeks here, and it's going to be back to full steam ahead as we get into August and that playoff push with them back, and then also potential trade deadline acquisitions, whatever that may be, whether it's moves around the edges or bigger moves. Obviously, some things are coming. So with that Braves series, I'm really not concerned. I mean, the fact that they got one, I think that Alex Carr tweeted out, it's like you get one in that series and the Braves only gain a game on you because of that. If you get swept, it's a little bit of a different feel, obviously, but just getting that one game was huge. I thought they would get the Saturday game, to be honest, but didn't pan out that way. Rangers had a couple of rough starts. You see with him and Imanaga, they were both due for a little regression. It's just going to happen, unfortunately. That's baseball. It's a long season, so you expect it to happen at some point. And again, even Ranger at his worst, really, it isn't. If your offense has a good night, you can still win a game where Ranger isn't 100% on. I fully believe that. But obviously this weekend was not great. That being said, they're also down their sixth starter right now in Turnbull too, who we all know should be probably the fifth starter. But point being, you're down two guys there. So look, Mercado, he had a fun first start in Wrigley Field, but you saw from the first pitch on Sunday, you saw why he's not ready to be an MLB rotation yet. He is definitely going to be an interesting kind of project, I guess you could say, over the next couple of years, but he's just not quite there right now. And I kind of see him as more of a reliever. I think he'd be really good in that role, but they like him as a starter right now. We'll see how that pans out. But I'm rambling a little bit. I want to kind of get your thoughts on everything I just talked about with the Braves series, rotation, getting healthier, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the Braves, they play good at home. I mean, they do. And it's obviously, it's hard to get down there and win whenever you get a bad start at a Ranger. You're missing Schwarber and Harper and Remuto. It's just it's so hard to win games whenever your pitcher gives up 6 runs and you're missing two or three of your biggest bats. It's just you can't really look too much into that game because I think ever since Ranger got hit on the hand by that comebacker, he's kind of just been a different pitcher, and his velo's been down, his command hasn't been good. He hasn't been himself, and I think there's definitely it's something to do with that comebacker hitting him on the hand. That was really just the turning point for me when it comes to him. But on the flip side, I think other than Mercado, the rest of the pitching was actually pretty good down there for the most part. I mean, obviously not perfect, but it's definitely acceptable because the Braves obviously have a good lineup, even without Acuna in there. Riley's been red hot lately, and Olsen, he's always a threat. I mean, he's had a really bad year compared to last year, which love to see it if you're a Phillies fan. That whole lineup was just kind of due for a lot of regression, and it's kind of just hitting them right in the face right now. But obviously Marcell Ozuna is the greatest regular season player of all time, and he never does anything in the playoffs, but that's kind of a story for a different day.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of other pitchers who did well, man, how about Tyler Phillips come in relief that game on Sunday? I mean, that's the spot you want to put him in. It's no stress, just eat innings. And he did exactly that. He gave up the bomb, but I think it was to Ozuna, correct? Was that the home run he gave up?
I thought it was maybe White was his name, Eli White.
Okay. Yeah, I honestly forget.
I don't remember.
That late game was, outside of Tyler Phillips, the late game was very unentertaining. So there wasn't much reason to be watching it. But that being said, Tyler Phillips, man, I mean, it really was mostly just the sweeper, but it was really impressive. So I don't know. I mean, while he's up here, he's a guy who could definitely eat some innings. And, it's kind of like, I'm not saying him and Jose Ruiz are similar pitchers, but similar role, obviously, to where you're not hoping to bring them into big spots. But in those low leverage spots, I mean, Jose Ruiz has been very good. Maybe Tyler Phillips can contribute in those spots and then work his way up to a better role at some point. But that was definitely cool to see. Like, I think he broke, a 123-year-old record of most strikeouts by a Phillies reliever in their debut. So that was pretty cool. And yeah, I mean, it was just that was definitely like one of the few bright spots out of the last couple games of that series. But obviously, the offense was very, very poor in that span. It's just going to happen. I mean, there's just going to be those series. And I think the Phils, while they get these guys back right now, I think they're definitely ready to kind of get to the All-Star break. I think everyone's kind of ready to get to the All-Star break because you evaluate these next 6 games for every team. Like, I think we'll get into trade talk, but just looking around the league, you're going to get a better look at what the market is. Not right away. You won't know everything. But a team like the Rays, for example, I want to say they play Cleveland and the Yankees the next 2 series. And then I think they play another contender right out of the break. So going into the break, you're going to get a good, I think they're right around 500. You're going to get a good kind of feel for where they're going into the deadline at. Not right, like I said, not right after the All-Star break, but I mean, this is really the time of year where all these teams who are on the fringe, like you're going to see whether they're kind of going to buy or sell based on how they perform these next 2 weeks or so. And I think the Phillies are going to be keeping a close eye on things as well. And I'm very curious to see where things develop. And kind of going back to that Dodgers series, for us, that's just a big series to kind of just give us a landmark of where we're at with the current team right now. And again, kind of how we match up against the second best team in the NL. I mean, it's a very, very good test for this team. And I think you're going to that series, correct? Tomorrow night?
I'm going tomorrow night.
Awesome.
Should be a good time.
Absolutely. Definitely cool to see Shohei in town and see guys like Freddie play too. I mean, seeing Freddie Freeman play is it's awesome. I
don't know if you saw, but they just put Glasnow on the IL.
Did they? That's unfortunate.
Yep, so kind of a shame.
Tomorrow?
No, I think it's going to be Gavin Stone versus Chris Sanchez. But
okay, this will still be a good matchup. Yeah, but that should be fun.
That's brutal for the Dodgers, though, to lose a guy like Glasnow. I mean, he's been probably their best pitcher all season. So they just got Bobby Miller back, so I guess that kind of aids it a little bit. But he hasn't exactly been very good this year either. So
sure, and that's been Glasnow's problem, unfortunately, his whole career. Like he has not been able to stay on the mound, and that was the big thing when they traded for him. Was like definitely a great move. Like getting him, like their rotation was terrible last year. They had Lance Lynn pitching in the playoffs, so,
and Clayton Kershaw, and he was terrible too.
Yeah, right. And the rotation is much improved this year for sure, but they could probably still use another guy, honestly. Like I don't know.
Or 2.
It should be interesting. Yeah, right. And it sounds like they're still kind of looking for a hitter as well. So they're by no means a perfect team. Obviously, we are by no means a perfect team, but it'll be definitely a good test over these next 3 games to see where we're at. And obviously, it's not the end all be all if we lose 2 games. Like it is what it is. You know, you're when you're in the playoffs, it's going to be all your best guys lined up in the rotation. It's going to be you're going to have all the stops out in the lineup as far as platoons go, as far as pinch hitters go. Like things are going to look a lot different by then, obviously, but definitely good to see where we're at right now. So I don't know if you had any other thoughts going into the Dodgers series.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, like, as far as the Braves go, like their starting pitching is really good, no doubt about it, but they're missing Spencer Strider, obviously. But if he's healthy, I'd say them and the Phillies are far and away the best 2 pitching staffs in baseball. Starting pitching. I mean, the bullpen for the Phillies is a lot better than the Braves. But, I mean, just in general, the starting pitching for the Braves and Phillies is it's so far and away so much better than every other team in the NL right now. And the only team in the AL that would really compete with them would be the Mariners, probably, I would say. So it's such a good spot for the Phillies to be in, to have pretty much all their big guys healthy going into the back half of the season to come out of the All-Star break, staying healthy.
And you would have thought you could have thrown Cleveland in there, but they have had some bumps in the rotation this year as well.
They lost Shane Bieber pretty much right off the rip, so that sucks.
McKenzie, I believe, got optioned a little while ago, and then I saw they just added Spencer Howard to the roster as well. So the fact that him and Ben Lively being in the same rotation is wild. I think Lively's actually been pretty good for them, but I think Logan Allen hasn't really been all that good for them. So which is kind of odd, but like you said, the Mariners rotation, man, that's like Even the
It's
guy,
good.
like they have a few, 2 or 3 guys who are kind of like middle of the pack, but they're still 3.8, 3.7 ERA for most of them. And then their top 2 are obviously very good, but
Yep.
great pitching development over there. But yeah, like you said, Braves, while they don't have the rotation depth, Reynaldo Lopez is the real deal. Like you saw that on Sunday, that guy can pitch. Unfortunately, like in the first inning, even when you saw Mercado get out of that jam, the way he was pitching, and then when you saw the way Reynaldo Lopez was pitching, you were like, okay, it's probably going to be one of those days where we just get shut out. And that's essentially what it was. So, like you said, I agree with you. Like the Braves, while they don't have the depth that we do in the rotation, their top 3 or 4 are definitely it's definitely a potent mix. And it's not a team you want to see, especially the way they are right now. They kind of have a little bit of that underdog feel to them. So they're going to get in the playoffs no matter what. With that rotation, it's just not really a team you necessarily want to see. And there's a lot of those teams in the NL, honestly. Like you look at a team like the Pirates, I would not, if I was a wild card team, I'd be terrified to face Skeens and Jared Jones in a 3-game series, and Mitch Keller too. Like that's scary. So definitely interesting to kind of look at the rotations around the league and just kind of how that impacts the wild card picture and all that. But I agree with you. I think the Braves rotation, yeah, you definitely saw this weekend. They have some guys over there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And the Dodgers also have some guys. I mean, they have a lot younger guys, but they have guys that have very high potential, like Gavin Stone and Bobby Miller. Those guys are no pushovers. I mean, obviously, they're 2 of the top pitching prospects in baseball, or they were before last year, I think. I think they both lost their rookie status last year, but they're both very good pitchers, and it's going to be a big challenge for the Phillies this next 3 games. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they respond, especially with getting their big guys back.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say hi to a few people in the chat here. Lil G, Christopher, and then I guess someone from the team I coached this past year. So welcome in. Got a hi, Coach Hunter there. But anyway, I do want to talk about the 7 All-Stars we have, Drew, which 7, that's a crazy number. I mean, to have that many guys, and granted, fan vote helped, but you could argue Chris Sanchez should have been in there too. And he may still get in there based on who's available, who's not. Like that is really, really cool to finally be that team with all those all-stars in there. Like I think we've been worthy of more in years past for sure, especially the past 2 years. There's definitely been some snubs, I would say. But to get these guys in, and especially, man, 2 best friends in Strom and Hoffman, man. I mean, those are like probably me personally. I think those are my 2 favorite guys in the bullpen right now. And I liked them last year too. I was obviously, I was a big Strom guy coming into the year, but I mean, to see those 2 guys get in, Ranger too, like he absolutely deserves it. Wheeler, cool to see him finally. I believe he got snubbed last year, or the year before, if I'm not mistaken. Last year actually wasn't pitching too well, but to see those guys get in, and then to see all the position players too, like Bohm, Turner, Harper, man, it is awesome to have those guys in the All-Star game this year. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. I just feel genuine happiness for all 7 of them.
Yeah, I mean, nobody deserves it more than Bryce Harper. I mean, he's never played in the All-Star game as a Philly, which is just outrageous. I mean, he's been nothing short of phenomenal since he came to Philly, and he hasn't really got his flowers as far as an All-Star selection yet. So it was good to see him lead the NL and just get in right away and get some respect from the fans, because he absolutely deserves it. He's one of the best players in the league, and I think at this point he's kind of underrated. It's kind of crazy to say, but people call him overrated so much. They think he's overrated, so he's underrated now. It's such a turn from what it was when he was at the Nationals, because he wasn't even that crazy in the 1 year with the Nationals, and now look at him. I mean, he's batting 300 every year. He never did that when he played for the Nationals. So, I mean, obviously he's the big guy, but Bohm, I mean, it's so crazy to see where he's came from where he was just a year ago. He's such a fun player to watch. He's easy to root for, and he works hard. It's very evident. So it's super, super nice to see him get this opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said on Harper, he had a number of those years where he would have a year where he would hit 300 and have an MVP year, and then he'd hit 247 the next year. And part of that was injuries and stuff too. But like you said, to string together the consistent success he has in the past 3 or 4 years with the Phillies is just incredible. And it really all started with that 2021 MVP season, because before that, there was definitely some talk like from some of the fans, some of the more casuals, but about how was he really worth all that money? And I think, you've seen the past 3.5 years, he's been worth every single cent. I mean, you could even take out every regular season and just look at his postseasons. He's been worth every single cent. So to see him get in the All-Star game definitely was scary when he went down too. Like, it was just like, man, well, we lost Harper now, and we're not going to see him in the All-Star game. Like this was supposed to be the year we finally got to see him, and now it looks like we will see him there. So it's awesome to see that. And like you said, Boom, man, the way he's worked, he's definitely faced a lot of adversity. Just even the past couple of years where he's been better, like there's been a lot of adversity from the fan base, a lot of pressure from the fan base too, and rightfully so. But to see him just break out in the way he has this year, and he slumped for a little bit this year too. May was not kind to him, but then he comes back with an incredible June and just kind of cemented himself as the third baseman for the NL. So really cool to see. But go for it.
I mean, I just kind of wanted to say, like, I bought an Alec Boehm jersey in 2020. I think you know that. So it was kind of like a disaster up until middle of last year, end of last year, something like that. But I kind of felt bad about it. Like, I was like, dang, I might have made a mistake there. But, man, he's proven me wrong, and I'm so glad because I was obviously a huge supporter of him. I mean, I bought his jersey 4 years ago now, so it's super, super cool. I mean, it's just – and obviously he's Trey Turner. He's one of the best shortstops in the league. He's hitting, I think, 340 this year, so it's just super nice, super cool to see.
How about the past week he had, too? Multi-home run games twice.
Yeah,
that guy's
he's crazy.
Right now. Yeah,
he is blazing hot, and he needs to do it this series too.
Yeah, 100%, especially against former team as well. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, don't worry. Your jersey curse isn't that bad. Me and Ian have a buddy who bought a Castellanos jersey, so right.
Man.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Sorry, Nate, but that has not gone too well. But like, yeah, going back to Boehm too, it's like he has that rookie season in 2020. It's like, okay, really good season, 20 game or like 60 games that year though. Let's see what he does over a full season. And 2021 was not really all that special. Obviously, I believe he got sent down in July or August of that year, and it was definitely discouraging as a Phillies fan to see that. But to see where he's come from, like there to now, man, it's just really, really impressive, especially defensively too. Again, he doesn't make every play. He still makes errors, but the fact that he has the mental to just kind of shake that off and just be like, all right, I'm going to go out and get the next play. Even in games where he has a couple errors, it's like, all right, let me go make up for him with my bat. Like he definitely still wears his heart on his sleeve, and he's very, very emotional, which can be a detriment sometimes. But it also shows you that he absolutely cares. Like he cares more than a lot of players in the league, honestly. So really cool to see him be named an All-Star. But kind of moving from there, I feel like we've talked about kind of the state of the team. Like, I don't know if you had anything else just on the team in general right now. I feel like there's not really any big storylines right now to cover outside of like, I'm kind of ready to just talk a little bit about trade stuff if you are. I mean, I don't know if you got anything else to talk about. But
the only thing I can add about the All-Star game is it doesn't even feel like we're having a good Zach Wheeler year, and he's still one of the best pitchers in baseball. It is so crazy. I mean, the expectations for him are like through the roof. I mean, it's so cool because this 5 years ago, you couldn't even imagine this for the Phillies whenever they have 3 or 4 top of the end rotation guys all in one rotation at the same time. It's like 2011 all over again. Yeah,
seriously, man, it really is. It really is. And again, to see what the 3 guys behind him are doing, like it's just nice. It's nice to have that comfort that you're probably going to get a good start out of all your guys going into at least 4 to 5 starts right now. And to have just to know that, like you said, Wheeler's not even really hit his stride yet, but you know he's going to do that in October. Like it's just, there's something special for a player to just kind of be able to flip that switch. It's special. Look at Nola last year. He had a terrible regular season. And obviously part of that was he figured out the pitch clock the last couple of weeks of the season. But some guys just have that switch they flip, and it feels like the Phillies have a good number of those guys. And Zach Wheeler is probably the prime example. I mean, he has pretty much come through in every single postseason start he's been in, and to see him get recognized as an All-Star this year, well deserved. So I did want to talk. We haven't talked since. Hopefully I'm saying it. I don't know if Bowden, I believe Jim Bowden dropped that report. The Phillies will be in on center fielders, and again, take it with a grain of salt. There's a lot of reports flying out there right now, so I don't really know what's correct or not. But and I will mention the Ken Rosenthal one right after this. But he mentioned Robert, Chisholm, and Bellinger as 3 guys the Phillies may look at for center field. And then Rosenthal said, I believe today or yesterday, which this made much more sense to me, that they're going to look to kind of shore up the edges of the team, like look for role players and bullpen depth, which you and me have talked about that, Drew. Like, I think that makes the most sense. You just did a video on Kyle Finnegan, who he would add length to the bullpen. And then I did a video on Mark Kanya. Like, obviously that's not a starter. That's a platoon. So I think we will do videos on more impact players as we get closer to the deadline. But I think that kind of shows you kind of where our heads are at right now. Finnegan definitely a more impact player than Kanye. Like he would be a guy who you might call into some high leverage spots when other guys aren't available. So a little bit different there, but again, with the idea of adding line to the bullpen, he's not going to come here and be the closer. But point being, I do want to kind of talk about those two reports, just your thoughts on that, and then we can kind of get into the three players that Bo did mention as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to my cousin about it earlier a little bit, but the biggest thing with me, I mean, obviously everybody wants Luis Robert. I mean, that's no question about it, but he's going to cost you so much, and the risk with him is just he doesn't play a lot of games. He misses so much time on the injured list, and that's just really not a risk I want to take personally. Because if I'm going to give up a guy like Aiden Miller for him, which is probably what it's going to cost, and I don't want to do that anyways. So, I mean, if I'm giving up a guy like that, I want a guy that is going to stay healthy for me. And Luis Robert has never proven that he can stay healthy. I think he had one full season, but outside of that, he's pretty much been hurt at least like 50 games out of every single year, it seems like. So maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe I'm misremembering the numbers, but I don't trust it. And I would rather just go for a guy like I was talking to my cousin about a little bit through text, like Taylor Ward. I mean, he's had his own injury issues, but he's a good like budget option as far as like how much you're going to give up as far as prospects go.
Mm-hmm. Taylor Ward to me is like a perfect acquisition almost. Like obviously he's not the perfect player, but I just think he fits pretty much everything you're looking for in terms of a type of player we're profiling to add to this team that we have been profiling for the past year and a half, like since going back to last deadline and last spring, honestly. He just makes a whole lot of sense. And I think the Angels may not move him this deadline, which makes sense because he still has years of control. Like there's no pressure on them to move him this deadline. But if you get closer to the deadline and you can drop the price down a little bit and get him for a reasonable price, it'd make a lot of sense. Like obviously you have to move Marsh back to center field, and there are thoughts about that as well. Like I'm okay with that. I think we'd be fine with Marsh in center. It's just, you just know there's going to be a couple plays here and there where it's like, man, well, I wish we had like an elite defensive center fielder out there over Marsh right now. But Taylor Ward's a good defensive left fielder too, I believe. Like again, a guy who really has a good approach at the plate. He mashes lefties. He pretty much does everything you're looking for. So as far as Robert goes, like I'm not giving up Miller for him, but I think I'm kind of inching my way towards that. Like I think I'm slowly but surely kind of coming around to that idea. But like you said, it's just he's not on the field. I do think some of the injuries have been a little fluky, but at the same time, I know Luis Robert has elite traits. Like I get that. And I'm certainly not denying that. I think they are there. I think he is a very, very good player. I just don't know if he's a player I would give up Aiden Miller for. Even like, maybe I shouldn't say even if healthy. If he was healthy, I think we definitely would.
If you could guarantee me a full season of health out of him, I would no doubt do it. Yeah, no doubt about it. One for one, though. I wouldn't do anything on top of Aiden Miller. Maybe like a lower tier prospect, whatever it may be. But I'm not going overboard because Aiden Miller looks like he's going to be a star. And that's just not something I would want to give up if I'm the Phillies. And I don't think they're going to do it because I think they value him very, very highly. Like probably more than Andrew Painter at this point.
Yeah, I mean, when's the last time we had a hitting prospect like Miller? I mean, I can't think of too many.
Not since I became a Phillies fan.
yeah, right.
Crazy.
Like, there's been very few guys. Like obviously Bowman and Stott were very good prospects, but again, I know Miller's not there yet, and like obviously his numbers in Lakewood aren't the best right now, but you can see he's starting to figure it out in Lakewood too. He's starting to hit some bombs. Like he just has a sweet swing. There's some guys you can just tell the way the ball pops off the bat and the way like the bat path, you can just kind of tell, even as someone who's not really like big into bat path and all that type of stuff. Like sometimes you can just tell as a fan, and it seems like I don't think the Phillies are going to give him up at all. That's why it's kind of a moot point. Honestly, it's just like I don't see them giving up him or Painter right now. I don't think that's something they want to do. And I believe I heard someone say they found something with Aiden Miller, like the underlying numbers or stuff, and they're like, oh, we're definitely not giving this guy up now. I forget where I heard that, so I wish I could give credit. But I just don't, like you, I just don't want to give him up. And I get it. The Phillies are the best team in baseball right now, record-wise. And they have an opportunity to really capitalize at this deadline. This is definitely a window year. But I also think you can still win a World Series without getting Luis Robert. Like, would he come in here and would he like significantly increase your chances? Absolutely he would. And this is a great point too. Like Kevin Long's the man. Like we have one of the best hitting coaches in the league and we have one of the best pitching coaches in the league. So anyone who comes in here, you will see development from them as well. And hopefully Long can help him with the chase rate and all that stuff too. That's been the big problem for Robert. Yeah. But I don't know. I think it's kind of silly to say like, well, these prospects are unproven, so just trade them away. Like, no, that you have to know when the right opportunity comes to deal them. And you could argue that is Robert, and I get it. He's young and there's years of control. I just think if you're trading Aiden Miller, you better be getting like a Mookie Betts or Kyle Tucker type of player, which obviously neither of them are going to be on the market. But that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I think Robert's a tier below those guys. I think he's very, very good. But that's kind of where I'm at.
I pulled up this comment because I wanted to kind of say, like, Luis Robert's already a monster. I mean, you don't need Kevin Long's help to make him a monster. He's already one.
He'll just fine tune.
The health is just such a problem with him. I would never in a million years give up Aiden Miller for a guy that doesn't stay healthy, because Aiden Miller's probably going to be a pretty good player, and you don't want to be paying a guy that's not even on the field and giving up one of your top prospects to do it. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to mention something on Kevin Long on that. I forget. I had something to say on that. I think you probably said something similar though. But point being, like, again, I don't think you need to do that to win the World Series this year. Again, if the opportunity comes and they pull the trigger, like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh man, I'm pissed they traded Aiden Miller. Like, if they get Luis Robert, I'm going to be pretty excited, obviously. Like, I'll be a little sad, but and this is the other thing too, like, they're going to find room for Aiden Miller if he is that good. Like, I know he's not a left fielder like right now, but they put Rhys Hoskins in left field for a full season. Obviously not same front office, but like, he's athletic enough to where you can move some pieces around. Like you will find room for him.
Well, and Kyle Schwarber's contract's up in the next, I think he's a free agent after next year. So,
and Cassie too.
Yeah, that frees up the DH spot. I mean, you could put Bohm at DH, Miller at third. You could do Miller in left, Bohm at third, and then re-sign Schwarber. You could do so many different things. And, I mean, Miller, like you said, he's obviously very athletic. I mean, he plays shortstop, and he plays shortstop pretty well from what I've seen so far.
Yeah.
And, I mean, obviously you don't want to give that up, but, I mean, if you don't have a spot for him in the infield, then you don't have much of a choice. And left field's a relatively easy position to play, so I think he could pick up on it pretty quick.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, he's very athletic. Like, he would be fine out there. Like, if Whit Merrifield is surviving out there just off his speed and not really the jumps and everything, Aiden Miller's going to be fine in a couple of years if he has to play out there. I remembered what I was going to say on this. The guy was hitting 196 and he still had an 800 OPS. He's still very, and obviously his defense is pretty elite too. So, Robert is obviously an awesome player. But, and then the other thing I wanted to say too on this was, like you said, it really depends. Like, if they are going to commit to being like, all right, we will give up Aiden Miller in this deal. Let's kind of see what packages would be around it. Like, that's really what it comes down to is what you're giving up in addition to him as well. Like, Eduardo Tate, he's almost untouchable to me too. Like, maybe next year, the year after, I would consider trading him, but especially being a catching prospect, I feel like he's the next guy up. Like, he to me is the heir to JT right now. It's early to say that. He's playing in FCL. Obviously, we'll see how it develops, but I think it's hard to trade guys in the FCL right now. Like, it's just too early, in my opinion, to trade guys like him and Kaba. And then, like, you look at a few of the other guys at the top. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know who's really all that enticing right now. I guess maybe you dangle Carlos De La Cruz in some trades, but I don't think the White Sox are going to be saying, oh, Aiden Miller, Carlos De La Cruz, yeah, let's do that. Like, no, they're going to be fielding a lot of offers. Like, I don't think that's necessarily going to move the needle. So maybe some teams still value Abel, but again, what's his name? Matt Winkleman made a really good point today. Abel's still 22 years old. Like, he's 22 years old in AAA right now. As much as he's been frustrating this year, I saw you were talking with him, Drew, on Twitter. It's like, you don't want to just give up on him prematurely. It doesn't look bright right now, but there's still time for him to figure this out too.
Yeah. I mean, you don't immediately need him in the major leagues, and that's kind of the beauty in it because they can give him all the time in the world to develop and whatever he needs to do. But the flip side of that would be your entire rotation is locked up for the next handful of years, and Andrew Painter is going to be ready next year. So I don't know what you do with Abel at that point. Maybe that's one reason they would like to move him, or they will move him. I don't know, but that's just something to think about too, because they just handed out an extension to Christopher Sanchez, and Ranger Suarez, I mean, he's due a contract, I believe, after next year, but I think they would look to get that done as well. So it's going to be definitely interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me clarify, like, Abel's not going to hold up a Luis Robert trade for me. I'm not saying that, but
no,
as far as moving him for other names, though, it's like you do kind of consider things a little bit, and not just
I would never move him for a bench piece ever.
Oh, no shot.
You're just selling way too low at that point, because not even a year ago he was one of the top pitching prospects in baseball. I mean, he started the futures game, so that just kind of tells you exactly where he was.
And looked really good, I believe, in that game.
So,
to answer Chris's question, I think we're probably both on hang tight and hope the command develops. But again, if the right deal comes along, like for an impact bat, he would definitely be someone who I would consider dealing for the right guy. So, and Ian says Aiden Miller is untouchable for him too. And like you said, Robert's got to be guaranteed healthy. That's the biggest thing right now. So, and yeah, congrats to Carlos De La Cruz. He's been on an absolute tear the last month and a half or 2 months or whatever it is. He got moved to AAA today, so good for him, man. Definitely some promotions, I believe, that have happened in the past or are going to happen in the minors right now. So cool to see the farm system progressing like it is, even if just for trade stuff too, maybe. But we will see. I do want to talk about the other two guys in that report as well, because I know we have some varying opinions on those. And I want to start with Bellinger, because I think he's the less contentious of the two. The other one I think will be an interesting conversation. But as far as Bellinger goes, like, I still like the player. I still think he's a solid player. He has reverse splits. Like, he's hitting lefties well the past year and a half. I think he's a solid glove too. It's just, I don't see any reason with how he's not playing. If he was playing at the level last year, I could see him maybe opting out and being like, all right, I'm going to go see what else is out there. But he's not playing well enough right now for me to think he's not going to opt in that $25 million next year. And that's just way too much for me to take on. So he's just a hard no for me solely because of the contract. That's really all it is.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to be stuck with another outfielder with a garbage contract, and he's not going to produce up to the contract. That's just, that's the reality of it from the Phillies side of it. Like, obviously for us, we don't really care about the money because it's not our money, but at the end of the day, it affects the team. And I don't want to see them be tied up with a terrible contract for the next, I think it's a 3-year deal. So I don't want to
opt-outs and stuff or whatever, like every year or something, whatever.
Yeah. It's basically just, if he plays good, he'll opt out. If he plays like crap, he'll stay and eat up your money, basically. So I don't want him. I don't want anything to do with him. He's not anything special as far as a hitter goes. And I think there's better options that are probably cheaper at the end of the day.
Sure. If it was the same as last year and he was on a 1-year deal, absolutely. By all means, I would be like, yeah, like definitely go for it. But that's not the case. So, I just don't see really any reason to do that. I know Jack Fritz mentioned Ian Happ in the Cubs outfield, and I'm like, I guess like I could kind of see it. He just re-signed there though, and he's also not on a cheap deal either. So I don't know. Like I feel like the Cubs don't really have a lot of great options for us to trade for. And again, you also have to consider that the Phillies are probably going to try to go after Soto this offseason too. Like that, they're going to need some money stored away for that. So I'm not saying they're going to get him. The Mets and Yankees obviously will be very high bidders for him, but I think the Phillies are probably going to put in. They're going to be right up there trying to get the best offer for him. So anything that could kind of deter those plans is different. But I do want to talk about Jazz Chisholm a little bit. Let me just say, I really don't think there's any world where they would trade for him. I just don't see it happening. But it is a curious conversation. So I want to get your thoughts first, because I know we differ on this opinion here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want him. It's pretty simple. I mean, he's not as reliable as I would like for a guy that you're going to be giving up good prospects for. And I just don't see the value in adding a guy like that, because he's relatively positionless. I mean, he plays center field, but he doesn't play a great center field by any means, I don't believe. So that's another downside to it, because you're going to have to put him in left field or wherever you decide to put him. I don't really know what his position is at this point. So, I don't want him.
I think with Jazz, like he's kind of the way I would describe him is he I think I said this in our chat. He's painfully mid. Like I don't think he's elite at anything. I don't think he's bad at anything either. Like that's kind of deal with center field. I think he makes some good plays out there, but obviously he hasn't played there very long, so there's still some adjustments being made. Last year I actually thought he was pretty good in center field, but this year I'd say he's been okay out there. Like I think he could survive out there. He's obviously very athletic too. He's a flashy player. Like he lives for the big moment, except for the wild card last year when he said he was built for it and he wasn't. But different conversation. Anyway, I do think though, like if the price is low enough, I think there will be a team who will probably spend a little too much for him. Like I know the Mariners were mentioned as a team that like that's the thing. I think someone will spend a little more. But like if the Marlins really can't find many suitors and the Phillies can get him for a decent price, I really wouldn't be opposed to it. I think he's a solid bat. I think he's hitting 277 versus lefties this year. Like he's been all right versus them, versus where he hasn't really been in the past. And yeah, you are going to have some frustrating moments with him at the plate. Like he strikes out a decent bit, but not a ton. He walks a decent bit, but not a ton. Like I said, painfully mid. Like it's very like his Savant page is probably one of the weirdest I think I've ever seen. But I think he's kind of like he gives you depth at the bottom of that order. Like he's a steady option in the 7, 8, or 9 hole. Again, I think he's a fine center fielder, which I think you'll take right now. So I think that like, look, I think there's some upside there, but again, it would have to be if the price came down for me because you're taking on 3 years of control for that guy. Like if I'm getting a center fielder, I want someone who's going to be out there. Like if you're going to take on years of control, I want someone who's going to be very reliable out there too. And maybe Jazz is young. Like he's still, I think 25 maybe. Like very real possibility he could improve over the next few years too, which is, I guess that's part of the upside as well. And like I said, I think it gives you some real depth at the bottom of the lineup that you're kind of missing right now. But as far as this comment goes to like, definitely an upgrade from Pache, but 2 different roles there as well. Like as far as
that's why.
Right. Like
it's not even, you're comparing a starter to a bench player.
Platoon.
And a bench player that's not even a good bench player. So it's just 2 completely different situations. Like Pache, I mean, he might stick on the roster until the trade deadline, but he's pretty much a lock to be gone afterwards because they're going to find somebody better than him. And I mean, Jazz is obviously a big upgrade from him, but he's not a big upgrade from a guy like Brandon Marsh because they're pretty similar hitters actually, as far as like numbers go, I believe. And Marsh probably even has better discipline than him at the plate. So I don't know. I'm just not big on Jazz. I think he thinks he's a lot better than he is, and that really annoys me. I hate that. I hate that. Like, don't even get me started. I hate that.
He definitely has an ego, and he thinks he's a star for sure. I do think,
and he's the biggest MLB The Show cover fraud of all time. That guy did not deserve to be on the cover of that game. I don't know. Yeah,
big reason why I don't pay attention to the covers for video games anymore. It's just it's kind of crazy nowadays. But but I do think like you kind of need that too. Like I'd rather have him think he's better than he is than the opposite, obviously. So like there's part of that can be good. I do think he's a clown. Like I think he's a little bit of a bozo sometimes. There's some times where he should probably just not talk, but like I don't think it's ever been anything too crazy. The only thing I will say is like, obviously he kind of took some shots at, didn't say his name, but we would assume was Miggy Rojas, right? Like that's pretty, I don't know who else it would have been who he was talking about in that quote. And granted, like he said now the locker room seems better, but Rojas is Miggy Rojas, that is, he's a well-respected player. Like he's a good defensive guy. Like obviously he's a veteran, and yeah, sure. Like the Marlins didn't really win anything while he was there, but like you can still be a leader without being a star. I think that's an important distinction to make. So I do think his comments were a little bit out of line as far as him and Rojas in the locker room goes. And obviously Rojas said himself, he's like, you don't know me like that. Like I don't know why you're coming at me taking shots like that. So there are some things there with Jazz. He's definitely, personality wise, I'm not really the biggest fan of him, but I do think if he, let's say it does happen, let's live in that world for 1 second. I do think that I do think the city would embrace his personality for sure, and he would play into it. And I think he's another guy like kind of like a Rosarena. I think he gets a jolt from coming here, going from Miami where there's not a lot of fans, and playing in front of a crowd like this. So that's really all I got on him. I mean, I know I'm a little more positive than most, but
and I think that's kind of like there's two sides to that coin, because like when he came here and played in the playoffs, he couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe playing in front of the big crowd is not for him. Who knows?
Yeah, but then he's got that crowd behind him at the same time too. So I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
interesting.
some guys, the bright lights are just too bright for them, and that's
Could
just
be.
the way it is. I mean,
Yeah.
there's guys that hit Marcelo Ozuna. Look at him. I mean, he's like an MVP candidate, and he is probably one of the worst postseason hitters I've ever seen. He's terrible.
The nice thing is Jazz goes from hitting at the top of that Marlins lineup to then if he does come here, he's just turning it over to the top of the order. So even if he doesn't produce, it's like he's really not supposed to be the one producing anyway. So that's kind of where I have some comfort with him, even though big lights there. But anyway, that's what I got on him. Move on to another comment here if you're good with that. But
I'm good.
I don't know if Brenton Doyle is going to be available, but Chris, we were talking about this in Discord the other day. If he's available, this is actually a really exciting option to me. I mean, I want to say he's 100th percentile in every defensive metric. Like that's obviously rare. So you're getting a cannon of an arm and a guy who's going to cover ground out there, which, mind you, is not easy to do in Coors Field with how that ball flies out there too. So that's impressive. The only thing I saw about Brenton Doyle when I checked his splits, and obviously, look, same last name, I'd have to buy a jersey. I would love it. Like that would be awesome for me. But the only thing I saw was his home and road splits are drastically different. I believe Chris mentioned he has a good 12 plate appearance sample size in Philadelphia. But as far as his splits at Coors Field and away from Coors Field, not good. That is very concerning to me. Like any Rockies player, when they have bad away splits, it's a major red flag. So that's my only concern with Brenton Doyle. But otherwise, like really talented player and a lot of like raw skill. Obviously, the bat speed is there. Like obviously the advanced stats are there for sure. Like he has a lot of good traits, but I'm just not sure. I'm not sure if A, he's going to be available, and B, it's going to be expensive because of the year's control, and then C, the away splits really concern me. So that's really all I got on him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that much about him, so I'm not going to really act like I do. But I mean, I trust what you're saying. Obviously, if you think he's a game changer, then I would absolutely trust that. But I was just scrolling on Twitter there for a second, see if there's anything that popped up. The Dodgers have 15 players on the IL. There's just no reason you shouldn't win 2 out of 3 in this series. I mean, that's crazy. That is crazy. I mean, they're missing Mookie Betts, obviously. I mean, that's a big one. But Tyler Glasnow and Max Muncy's on the IL. They have so many guys, especially their pitching. I mean, they have like 8 starting pitchers on the IL. That's nuts. I mean, good for them that they're still playing as good as they are.
Yeah, I knew there was some guys on there. I didn't realize it was 15 though. That's crazy. A hit. And the fact they're still the second best team in the NL too. Like credit to their depth. Credit to their depth for sure.
Good for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if there's any other trade things I wanted to talk about. I think with the Rosenthal report, again, I really think you're looking at a platoon for Brandon Marsh, maybe a starting outfielder, and like you said, probably like a 3rd, 4th, or 5th option out of the bullpen. Like those are the 3 areas I think they're going to address. Or try to address. I don't think there's any question about that. Unlike last year, I think they are definitely going to add an outfielder of some sort, which I was really upset last year. I spent the whole month of July looking at trade targets in the outfield, and they didn't go get a guy. So that was obviously frustrating for me. But those are the 3 spots I think you're going to look to address. And you can see that's unbelievable.
Yeah. They have a ton of players on the IL. I mean, a lot of good players. I mean, Tony Gonsolin was like a Cy Young candidate like 2 years ago. And I mean, Yamamoto, obviously, he probably would have ended up pitching in this series. Betts is just one of the best players in baseball. And it's crazy. It's crazy.
That's unbelievable.
See. Yeah. Crazy to see that they're as good as they are and they have that many guys on the IL.
Yeah, former Phillies legend Connor Brogdon on that list as well. But so, like I said, I think they're going to address those 3 spots. I honestly think, look, depending on the players, obviously, I won't be really upset if they just add a platoon for Marsh and a bullpen guy. Like if that's the 2 moves, I'm not super upset. I'm not as much as other people. I'm not like they have to go get a starting outfielder. I definitely think they do. It's just I'm not necessarily expecting it, I think, at this point. So I think that's what's probably going to happen. But I would love if they obviously got a starter too. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that. But that's kind of where I'm at this point. I think they definitely need a platoon. I think they could definitely use one more guy in the pen.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty much exactly where I'm at. I mean, I think the bullpen piece is obviously lower of the priorities, but I mean, if they can get another guy like Kyle Finnegan, like I did the video on the other day, I mean, that's huge because that makes the bullpen going from great to pretty much unstoppable in big spots. I mean, obviously, guys are going to give up runs. It happens. I mean, especially when you're facing the best pitchers or best hitters in the league in the playoffs. So it would make such a big difference for them to have a big time bullpen arm come in at the deadline.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we talked about with Pache earlier, with Jazz being upgraded from him. Speaking to the platoon thing a little bit, Pache and Whit Merrifield have just obviously, it goes without saying. I mean, they have been terrible platoons this year, unfortunately. Like it's bad. They need a guy who can hit left-handed pitching, and I get it. Like people want more opportunities for Marsh. I understand that line of thinking. That's where I was coming into the year, seeing more at bats this year. Like, I'm not saying he's gotten a plethora of opportunities, but the opportunities have not gone very well. It's been very 50
at bats is a fair amount. I mean,
decent sample size.
Yeah, and he's given you basically nothing. I mean,
right.
I think he has one extra base hit. That's unacceptable.
And it's like you look at. It's kind of like, and I'm not saying to the same degree, but it's almost like saying Pache should get more opportunities versus righties. We've also seen that this year too. He's gotten some at bats versus righties, and that has been very worse. Yeah, way worse. So, look, I love Brandon Marsh. I think he's absolutely a key piece of this team when it comes to winning a World Series. You need a platoon for him. You just do. Like, I don't know how else to put it. You're going to need a guy there. So I'm curious to see what they do there. There's a number of options you could add. You could promote, like Chris O'Donnell just said. You could absolutely promote Wes Wilson. I think that is probably going to happen at some point, like Chris said, depending on who we add. But that's kind of where I think things are headed. And to answer this question, I go back and forth on this. I really don't know. I could see it really going either way, but I don't know how you keep him on the roster at this point with how he's playing. It's really the only reason he would stick around is just because of track record and money. I mean, that's really the two reasons why he would be on the roster post deadline.
Yeah, I mean, track record, smack record. I don't care. get him out of here. I mean, he's been terrible.
I'm with you.
He's not even hitting 200, man.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no call for that on a team like the Phillies where they're trying to win a World Series this year.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to be better than that. And I think Whit would probably tell you the same thing if he got DFA'd. He'd probably say, I had to be better and I wasn't. So, I mean, I don't really know what else you can say. He's been terrible, and Pache's been just as bad. So they're gonna have to do something. They don't really have a choice.
No, 100%. That's really all I got though, Drew. I mean, I don't have anything anything else major to talk about. I really think trade deadline's probably the main thing to talk about at this point. I mean, that's really what we're looking at now. Is this team? We kind of have a feel for who they are. We have a feel for what a lot of these guys can do and where the holes are, and what are they going to do to address them in 15, 20 days or whatever it is at this point. So. I don't know if you had anything else to say, any other thoughts, any other topics you wanted to cover, but that's really all I got.
Yeah, no, I think we covered pretty much everything. We could sit here all day and talk about trade deadline pieces. I mean, that's just endless talk, but I mean, I think we covered pretty much all the main points that we needed to.
Yeah, the only other thing I would say is I brought up the Rays schedule. They have the Yankees 3 games, they have the Guardians 3 games, All-Star break, and then they face the Yankees 4 games right out of that. So These next 10 games I'm not saying it's going to determine whether they are a buyer or seller, but they're 2 games under 500 right now. So if they don't play well through this stretch, I think they will definitely entertain some Arozarena offers. But I think we all think he would probably be a very solid option. So I don't know.
And they just traded Phil Maton.
Yeah, there you go.
They traded him to the Mets for cash. So I mean, it's obviously nothing crazy, but I mean, if they're getting rid of the guys already, it kind of just tells you where they're leaning. I mean, I don't know what kind of year Maton's been having because the Rays have just kind of been like a non-factor as far as how good they've been. So, I mean, I think the Rays are going to end up selling, and I would love to see the Phillies get Arozarena. I mean, he's an exciting player, so it'd be cool.
Yeah, he's one of those guys again. Like, obviously, he's not having a good year this year, but another guy, like I'm not going to say, I think Taylor Ward is probably a much better fit just because I think he's a little more steady. He's much better in the outfield too. But Arozarena is one of those guys, another guy who I think is a very, very good fit for the team for what they need right now.
Yeah. And he's a vibes guy.
He's absolutely a vibes guy. I mean, doing the whole Randy pose in the playoffs, like that would go crazy. Like Citizens Bank Park would. I think he's a guy. He comes in here, he feeds off the energy and finishes the season strong and has an electric October. You saw it. You've seen what he's done in the big moment. We've talked about that before.
Like, he's a big game player, definitely, no doubt about it.
Yeah, look at the World Baseball Classic. He was, and obviously a little bit different. Like, obviously has a lot of emotion for Mexico. But anyway, just wanted to mention that. That was the only guy we really didn't talk about. But again, we'll be doing videos on all these guys more in depth as this month goes on. Obviously, you saw me and Drew did a couple videos this week. We got a couple more coming as well. And yeah, we're going to be cranking those out as July goes along. And a lot of guys to cover. A lot of reports I'm sure will come out between now and then. So yeah, that's all I got, Drew. Anything else you wanted to say before we sign off?
Nope, I think we're good.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. It was good talking about the Phils right now. Excited to see Kyle and Bryce come back tonight and what is definitely a big series. So thank you guys so much for watching. Enjoy the Phils tonight, and we will see you guys later. Peace.
Peace out, guys.